Sometimes the most powerful response isn't a shout or a fight back. Sometimes it's the quiet strength of someone who has been underestimated for far too long. This is the story of Maya Chen, a 17-year-old girl who walked across the same school bridge every day, facing the same torment until one afternoon when everything changed. What happened that day didn't just shock her bullies. It transformed an entire school community and reminded everyone that true strength often comes wrapped in the most unexpected packages. In a world where we're taught to fight fire with fire, Maya's response was like water, gentle, persistent, and ultimately more powerful than anyone could have imagined. This is her story, and it's about to change how you think about courage, kindness, and the incredible impact one person can have when they choose to respond with their heart instead of their fists. Maya Chen adjusted the straps of her worn backpack as she approached Jefferson High School's old stone bridge. The weathered structure stretched across Miller's Creek, connecting the main campus to the arts building where she spent most of her afternoons in the pottery studio. For 3 years, she had crossed this bridge twice daily, and for the past 8 months, it had become her personal gauntlet of humiliation. The autumn morning air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the distant sound of students chatting as they made their way to first period. Maya walked with her head down, dark hair falling like a curtain around her face, hoping to make herself invisible. She had perfected this art of disappearing in plain sight, moving through the hallways like a ghost, speaking only when spoken to by teachers, eating lunch alone in the library. Her worn sneakers made soft sounds against the bridge's stone surface as she began her crossing. The structure was beautiful in its old-fashioned way, with carved railings and arched supports that had stood for nearly a century. Students often gathered here between classes, leaning against the railings to talk or study. But for Maya, it had become something else entirely. Well, look who's trying to sneak across our bridge again. The voice belonged to Derek Morrison, a senior who stood nearly 6 feet tall with broad shoulders earned from years on the football team. He emerged from behind one of the bridge's support pillars, where he had been waiting, along with his usual companions,
Jake Sullivan and Brad Walsh.
The three of them had made tormenting Maya their morning ritual, something they seemed to find endlessly entertaining. Maya's steps slowed, but didn't stop. She had learned that showing fear only made things worse, so she continued walking, keeping her eyes fixed on the path ahead. Her heart began to race, but she forced her breathing to remain steady. Just 20 more steps to reach the other side. 20 steps to safety. Hey, I'm talking to you, Derek said, moving to block her path. His friends flanked him, creating a wall of sneering faces. Didn't your parents teach you any manners, or are they too busy running their little takeout place to bother with you? Maya stopped walking. She stood there silently, her hands gripping the straps of her backpack until her knuckles went white. The comment about her parents' restaurant hit particularly hard because she knew Derek had never even been there. He was just reaching for anything that might hurt her, anything that would get a reaction. Chen's Garden was a small Chinese restaurant that her parents, Lee and David Chen, had operated for 15 years. They had immigrated from Guangzhou when Maya was 2 years old, bringing nothing but hopes for a better life and her grandmother's recipes. The restaurant wasn't much to look at from the outside, squeezed between a dry cleaner and a cell phone repair shop, but it was clean, and the food was made with love. Maya had grown up in that kitchen, doing homework at a corner table while her parents worked late into the night. Cat got your tongue? Jake chimed in, his voice dripping with mock concern. Or do you just not speak English? Maybe we need to get you a translator. The other students walking across the bridge began to notice the confrontation. Some slowed down to watch. Others hurried past with their eyes averted, grateful it wasn't them in Maya's position. A few pulled out their phones, ready to record whatever happened next. This had become entertainment for some of them, a daily drama they could watch unfold. Maya raised her eyes to meet Derek's gaze for just a moment. What she saw there wasn't just cruelty, but something worse. Boredom. To him, she wasn't even a person worth hating. She was just a thing to break the monotony of his day, a target for his amusement. The realization stung more than any insult he could have thrown at her. Please let me pass, Maya said quietly, her voice barely audible over the sound of the creek flowing below. Derek laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the bridge's stone walls. Please let me pass, he mimicked in an exaggerated accent that bore no resemblance to how Maya actually spoke. She had been born in China but had lived in America since she was a toddler. English was as natural to her as breathing, but Derek didn't care about accuracy. He cared about the laughs from his friends and the phones now recording their interaction. You know what? I think there's a toll for using our bridge, Derek continued, warming to his theme. Maybe you should pay up before you cross. How about that fancy art stuff you're always carrying around? I bet it's expensive. Maya's grip on her backpack tightened. Inside was her sketchbook, filled with drawings she had been working on for months. There were portraits of her grandmother, landscapes of the small town where she lived, and detailed studies of hands and faces she observed during her silent lunch periods. The sketchbook represented hours of work, dreams she harbored about art school, and the quiet world she retreated to when the real world became too harsh. "I don't have anything valuable," she said, her voice steadier now but still quiet. "Let us be the judge of that," Brad said, reaching for her backpack. "Come on, let's see what the weird girl carries around all day." For a moment, Maya considered running. She could push past them, race across the bridge and disappear into the arts building. But she knew that would only make tomorrow worse. They would be waiting for her, angry about being embarrassed, ready to escalate their torment. And besides, there was something in her that refused to run. It wasn't courage exactly, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. She slowly slipped off her backpack and hugged it against her chest. "It's just school things," she said. "Nothing you would want." Derek stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne and the mint gum he was chewing. "Why don't you let us decide that?" His hand shot out and grabbed one of the backpack straps, trying to pull it away from her. Maya held on, and for a moment they engaged in a brief tug-of-war that drew more attention from the gathering crowd of students. Someone shouted encouragement to Derek, while others watched in uncomfortable silence. The morning sun cast long shadows across the bridge, creating a theatrical backdrop for the ugly scene unfolding. "Just give it to me," Derek said through gritted teeth, pulling harder. "Don't make this difficult." "No," Maya said, and something in her voice had changed. It wasn't loud, but it was firm in a way that surprised everyone, including herself. "No, I won't give it to you." The simple word hung in the air like a challenge. Derek's face darkened with anger and embarrassment. He wasn't used to being defied, especially not by someone he considered to be at the bottom of the school's social hierarchy. Around them, the crowd had grown larger, sensing that something significant was happening. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her, really looked at them for the first time in months. She saw curiosity, excitement, discomfort, and in a few faces, something that might have been sympathy. These were her classmates, people she had shared classes with for years but had never really connected with. They knew her as the quiet girl, the one who didn't cause trouble, who faded into the background. But in that moment, holding her backpack against her chest like armor, Maya realized something important. She was tired of being invisible. She was tired of walking through her days like a ghost, accepting cruelty as the price of peace. She was tired of letting other people define who she was and what she was worth. The creek flowed beneath them, carrying fallen leaves toward the distant river. Cars passed on the road beyond the school grounds, their drivers unaware of the small drama unfolding on the old stone bridge. Life continued around them, ordinary and peaceful, while Maya stood at a crossroads between the person she had always been and the person she was about to become. Derek's grip on her backpack strap loosened slightly as he studied her face, trying to understand what had changed. Jake and Brad exchanged glances, sensing a shift in the dynamic but not sure what it meant. The watching students held their phones steady, waiting to capture whatever happened next. Maya took a deep breath and spoke again, her voice carrying across the bridge with surprising clarity. "I said no, and I mean it." The words were simple, but they marked the beginning of everything that would follow. They were the first drops of rain before the storm, the first crack in a dam that had held back years of silence and submission. Maya didn't know it yet, but she had just taken the first step on a journey that would transform not just her own life, but the lives of everyone around her. The bridge seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Above them, clouds gathered in the autumn sky, and the air grew heavy with the promise of change. Maya Chen, the girl who had spent 3 years perfecting the art of invisibility, was about to discover the power of being seen. Derek's face flushed red at Maya's defiance. He had built his reputation on being the one who controlled situations, who decided how interactions would go. Having a girl he considered beneath his notice stand up to him in front of a growing crowd of students was not something he was prepared to handle gracefully. "Excuse me?" he said, his voice rising. "Did you just tell me no?" Maya's heart hammered against her ribs, but she managed to keep her voice steady. "Yes, I told you no." The watching crowd buzzed with excitement and disbelief. This was not how these confrontations usually went. Maya was supposed to hand over whatever Derek wanted, endure whatever humiliation he chose to dish out, and then hurry away with her head down. Her sudden backbone was as shocking to the observers as it was to Derek himself. "Do you know who I am?" Derek asked, stepping even closer. "Do you know what I could do to make your life miserable?" "I know exactly who you are," Maya replied. And for the first time in months, she looked him directly in the eye. "You're Derek Morrison. You play football. Your father owns Morrison Construction. You drive a red pickup truck and you park it in the same spot every day. You have a girlfriend named Ashley who sits with you at lunch. You're in my chemistry class, though I doubt you've noticed." The precision of her observations caught Derek off guard. Like most bullies, he had assumed his victim knew nothing about him beyond his role as her tormentor. The idea that she had been aware of him as a complete person, rather than just a source of pain, seemed to unsettle him. "So you've been watching me," he said, trying to regain his footing. "That's kind of creepy, don't you think? No creepier than waiting under a bridge every morning to harass someone who's never done anything to you." Maya shot back, her confidence growing with each word. A few students in the crowd made sounds of appreciation at her comeback. This was getting interesting. Jake and Brad looked less certain now, glancing at Derek as if waiting for him to reassert control of the situation. Derek's jaw clenched. "You think you're smart? Let's see how smart you are when everyone knows what a freak you really are. Let's see what's in that precious bag of yours." He lunged forward again, this time with more force, managing to grab the backpack and yank it from Maya's arms. She stumbled backward but didn't fall. The backpack hit the stone surface of the bridge with a soft thud, and Derek began unzipping it with theatrical ceremony. "Let's see what secrets little Maya keeps hidden," he announced to his audience. Maya watched in horror as Derek pulled out her sketchbook and began flipping through the pages. Her art was private, personal, something she had shared with no one except her grandmother, who encouraged her creativity. The drawings represented her inner world, the place she retreated to when reality became too harsh. Derek held up a detailed portrait she had drawn of Mrs. Waft Patterson, their elderly English teacher. It was beautifully rendered, capturing not just the woman's physical features but something essential about her character, the kindness in her eyes and the way she smiled when a student grasped a difficult concept. "Look at this," Derek said mockingly. "Our little artist has been drawing the teachers. This is actually pretty good." He sounded genuinely surprised, as if he hadn't expected Maya to be capable of creating anything worthwhile. Her voice was stronger now, fueled by genuine anger. "Those are mine." Derek ignored her and continued flipping through the sketchbook. He stopped at a self-portrait Maya had drawn while looking in her bedroom mirror, an honest rendering that captured her own uncertainty and longing. It was raw and vulnerable in a way that made her feel exposed. "Oh, this is interesting," Derek said, holding up the drawing for the crowd to see. "Little Maya likes to draw herself." What do you think, everyone? Think she got the sad, pathetic expression just right? Some students laughed, but it was nervous laughter. Others remained silent, beginning to feel uncomfortable with the direction this was taking. There was something about seeing Maya's art, about witnessing the clear talent and emotional depth in her drawings, that made the situation feel different. She wasn't just an anonymous target anymore. She was a person with feelings, dreams, and abilities that Derek was deliberately trying to destroy. Maya felt tears threatening to spill over, but she blinked them back. She would not cry in front of these people. She would not give Derek the satisfaction of seeing her break. "Please," she said, holding out her hand, "just give me back my sketchbook." "Why should I?" Derek asked, continuing to flip through the pages. "This is evidence that you're even weirder than I thought. Who draws pictures of teachers? Who sits around making art instead of having a social life?" He stopped at a drawing that made him pause. It was a sketch of the school cafeteria during lunch, but Maya had drawn it from her usual seat in the corner. The perspective showed table after table of students talking and laughing together, while in the foreground, barely visible, was the back of a solitary figure eating alone. The drawing was titled Invisible. Derek stared at it for a long moment, and something flickered across his face. For just an instant, he seemed to see Maya as more than just a target. He saw her loneliness, her isolation, the quiet pain that had inspired the drawing, but the moment passed quickly, replaced by his need to maintain his image. "This is pathetic," he said, but his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "You really are a loser." Maya looked around at the faces watching her. Some were laughing, others looked uncomfortable, and a few seemed genuinely sympathetic. She noticed Emma Rodriguez, a girl from her history class, looking particularly troubled by what was happening. Emma had always been kind to her in the few interactions they had shared. You're right, Maya said suddenly, her voice carrying across the bridge. I am alone most of the time. I do eat lunch by myself. I draw pictures instead of going to parties. You want to know why? Derek paused in his examination of her sketchbook, caught off guard by her admission. Because I've spent so much energy trying to stay out of your way, trying to be invisible, that I forgot how to be anything else, Maya continued. I've been so afraid of being noticed by people like you that I stopped trying to connect with anyone. She looked directly at Emma Rodriguez as she spoke, then at several other students in the crowd. I convinced myself that being alone was better than risking being hurt. But you know what I've realized? I'm already being hurt. Every day. By you. The bridge fell silent except for the sound of water flowing beneath them. Even Derek seemed uncertain how to respond to Maya's unexpected honesty. So what's your point? He finally asked, but his voice had lost its mocking edge. My point is that you've already taken enough from me, Maya said, stepping forward and holding out her hand again. You've taken my peace, my confidence, my ability to feel safe in my own school, but you don't get to take my art. You don't get to take the one thing that brings me joy. Derek looked down at the sketchbook in his hands, then back at Maya. The crowd waited to see what he would do. This had gone far beyond the usual morning harassment. Something real was happening here, something that would define how people saw both of them going forward. And what if I don't give it back? Derek asked. But the question sounded more curious than threatening. Maya took a deep breath. She thought about her grandmother who had survived poverty and war to build a new life in America. She thought about her parents who worked 18-hour days to provide for their family. She thought about all the drawings yet to be made, all the stories yet to be told. Then you'll have proven that you're exactly what I thought you were, she said. Someone who takes things from people because you can, not because you should. Someone who destroys beautiful things because you don't understand them. She paused, looking around at the assembled students. But I don't think that's who you really are, Derek. I think you're better than that. The words hung in the air like a challenge and an invitation combined. Derek stared at her, his face going through a series of expressions as he processed what she had said. No one had ever suggested that he might be better than his worst impulses. No one had ever given him the choice to be different. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting shorter shadows across the bridge. Students continued to arrive for school, some stopping to join the crowd, others hurrying past. The usual rhythm of a school day continued around them, but for the people on the bridge, time seemed suspended. Derek looked down at the sketchbook again, really seeing the drawings this time. Maya's talent was undeniable, her perspective unique and thoughtful. In her art he could see intelligence, sensitivity, and a way of looking at the world that was completely foreign to his own experience. You really think you know me? He asked quietly. I know that bullying me doesn't make you happy, Maya replied. I know that you're going through the motions of being cruel because it's expected of you. But I can see in your face right now that it doesn't feel good. Derek's friends shifted uncomfortably beside him. They had signed up for a simple morning harassment session, not this complex emotional confrontation. They wanted Derek to assert his dominance, end this uncomfortable conversation, and get back to the familiar dynamics they understood. But Derek continued to stare at Maya, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time. She wasn't backing down, but she wasn't attacking him either. She was offering him something he hadn't realized he wanted, the chance to be better than he had been. The choice was his to make, and everyone on the bridge knew it. What happened next would ripple outward, affecting not just Maya and Derek, but every student who was watching. They were witnessing a moment of truth, a crossroads where cruelty and kindness would battle for supremacy. Maya stood perfectly still, her hand still extended, waiting to see which version of Derek Morrison would emerge from this confrontation. Above them, the clouds that had been gathering all morning finally opened, and the first drops of rain began to fall on the old stone bridge. The first drops of rain splashed onto Derek's hands as he held Maya's sketchbook. He looked up at the darkening sky, then back at Maya, who remained standing with her hand extended. The crowd of students began to shuffle nervously, some pulling out umbrellas or heading for cover. But most stayed, sensing that they were witnessing something important. Derek's mind raced. Everything in his social programming told him to maintain his dominance, to mock Maya's vulnerability, and toss the sketchbook into the creek below. That would be the Derek Morrison his friends expected, the one who never showed weakness, never backed down. But something in Maya's steady gaze made him pause. You really want to know what I think about while I'm standing here harassing you every morning? Derek asked suddenly, his voice softer than before. Maya nodded, raindrops beginning to darken the shoulders of her jacket. I think about how much I hate getting up, Derek admitted, his words surprising everyone, including himself. I hate coming to school. I hate pretending that I have everything figured out. I hate that everyone expects me to be this person who doesn't care about anything. Jake stepped forward, alarm written across his face. Dude, what are you doing? Derek ignored him, his attention focused entirely on Maya. You know what the worst part is? I actually liked your drawing of Mrs. Proteas, Patterson. It's better than anything I could ever do. And that makes me angry, because I'm supposed to be good at everything. I'm Derek Morrison. I'm supposed to have it all. The rain was falling steadier now, creating small puddles on the bridge's stone surface. Maya lowered her extended hand but didn't step back. She could see something cracking in Derek's carefully constructed facade, and she realized that his cruelty toward her had never really been about her at all. What are you afraid of? Maya asked gently. The question caught Derek completely off guard. No one had ever asked him about fear before. In his world, showing fear was weakness, and weakness was something to be destroyed. I'm afraid, Derek said slowly, as if testing the words, that if I stop being the guy everyone expects me to be, I'll disappear completely. I'm afraid that underneath all the noise, there's nothing there worth knowing. The admission hung in the air like a confession. Several students in the crowd shifted uncomfortably, suddenly seeing their own fears reflected in Derek's words. The rain continued to fall, washing away the pretenses and leaving raw honesty in its wake. Maya felt an unexpected surge of compassion for the boy who had made her life miserable for months. She could see now that his cruelty had been a kind of armor, protecting him from his own insecurities. It didn't excuse what he had done, but it helped her understand it. There's definitely something there worth knowing, Maya said, stepping closer. But you'll never find out what it is if you keep hiding behind being mean to people. Derek looked down at the sketchbook in his hands again. The pages were beginning to dampen from the rain, and he quickly closed it to protect Maya's artwork. The gesture was small but significant, a sign that something fundamental had shifted. I don't know how to be different, Derek admitted. This is all I know. Brad Walsh, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke up. Derek, man, we need to go. You're freaking everyone out. But Derek didn't move. For the first time in years, he was having a real conversation with another person, one that wasn't based on maintaining his image or projecting strength. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. What if I said I was sorry? Derek asked Maya, his voice barely audible over the sound of rain hitting the bridge. What if I said I was sorry for everything and I meant it? Would that matter? Maya considered the question seriously. She thought about the months of humiliation, the morning spent dreading the walk across the bridge, the way Derek's harassment had made her feel small and worthless. An apology couldn't undo all of that pain. But she also thought about the vulnerability she saw in Derek's face now, the courage it had taken for him to admit his fears in front of their classmates. She thought about her grandmother's advice about forgiveness being a gift you give yourself, not just the person who hurt you. It would matter, Maya said finally, but only if it came with a promise to do better. Derek nodded slowly, water dripping from his hair. I promise, he said. I promise to try to be better. He held out the sketchbook to Maya, and she took it, holding it protectively against her chest. The moment felt monumental, like a peace treaty being signed between two countries that had been at war. Emma Rodriguez, who had been watching from the edge of the crowd, stepped forward. Maya, your drawings are really beautiful, she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the rain. I've seen you working on them during study hall. I always wanted to tell you that, but I didn't know how. Other students began to speak up. Marcus Thompson, a quiet boy from Maya's math class, said, I eat lunch alone too. I always wanted to sit with you, but I was afraid you wanted to be by yourself. Sarah Kim, a junior Maya barely knew, added, I saw what was happening to you every morning, and I hated myself for not saying anything. I was too scared. The admissions came like a dam breaking. Student after student spoke up, sharing their own experiences of loneliness, fear, and regret. Maya realized that she hadn't been as invisible as she thought. People had seen her, had cared about what happened to her, but they had been paralyzed by the same fear that had kept her silent for so long. Derek listened to the confessions with growing amazement. He had assumed that his behavior toward Maya was either ignored or approved of by his classmates. The idea that it had troubled so many of them, that they had wanted to intervene but hadn't known how, was a revelation. We could have stopped this, Emma said, looking directly at Derek. We all could have said something, but we were too worried about becoming targets ourselves. And, I let that happen, Derek replied, the full weight of his actions beginning to hit him. I made everyone afraid. I made it so that helping Maya meant risking being treated like her. The rain was falling harder now, soaking through jackets and backpacks. Most of the students had given up trying to stay dry and were simply standing there, experiencing this unexpected moment of collective honesty. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her, really seeing them for the first time. These weren't her enemies or strangers. They were people who had their own struggles, their own fears, their own dreams. Like her, they had been trapped in roles that didn't fully represent who they were or wanted to be. What if we all tried to be better? Maya asked suddenly. Not just Derek, but all of us. What if we stopped being afraid of each other? The suggestion rippled through the crowd like electricity. It was such a simple idea, but in the context of their shared experience, it felt revolutionary. Marcus Thompson nodded enthusiastically. I would love that. I'm so tired of eating lunch alone. We could sit together, Emma suggested. All of us who want to. What about you, Derek? Maya asked, turning to face him directly. Do you want to be part of something better than what we've had? Derek was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. Everything about his social status, his carefully cultivated image, told him to say no. His friends were already looking at him with confusion and disappointment. Accepting Maya's invitation would mean admitting that his previous behavior had been wrong, that he needed to change. But as he looked around at the faces of his classmates, Derek realized that his image hadn't been protecting him at all. It had been isolating him, trapping him in a role that required him to be cruel to feel powerful. He was tired of being that person. Yes, Derek said finally, I want to be part of something better. Jake and Brad exchanged shocked glances. This was not the Derek Morrison they knew. They weren't sure how to respond to this version of their friend, the one who showed vulnerability and admitted mistakes. What about football? Jake asked. What about your reputation? You can't just become friends with. He gestured vaguely at Maya and the other students gathered around her. Derek looked at his friends, really looked at them, and realized that their relationship had been built on a foundation of shared cruelty and exclusion. They weren't friends because they liked each other. They were allies because they helped each other maintain their position in the school's social hierarchy. Maybe my reputation needed to change, Derek said. Maybe we all need to think about what kind of people we want to be. The statement hung in the air like a challenge. Jake and Brad could accept Derek's transformation and examine their own behavior, or they could reject it and find new allies in their commitment to the old ways. The rain continued to fall on the old stone bridge, washing the dust from the carved railings and filling the air with the clean scent of a world being renewed. Around them, the school day was beginning in earnest. Bells rang, doors opened and closed, teachers prepared for their first classes. But, for the group of students standing on the bridge, everything had changed. They had witnessed something extraordinary, the moment when cruelty transformed into kindness, when fear gave way to courage, when isolation dissolved into connection. Maya tucked her sketchbook safely inside her jacket and looked around at the faces of her classmates. For the first time in months, she felt hopeful about walking across this bridge. For the first time in years, she felt like she might belong somewhere. The transformation wasn't complete yet. Real change would take time, effort, and the daily choice to be better than they had been before. But something had begun on this rainy October morning, something that would ripple outward and touch every corner of Jefferson High School. As the students began to head for cover, seeking shelter from the rain before their first classes, Maya realized that sometimes the most powerful moments came disguised as ordinary ones. Sometimes transformation began with a simple word, no. Sometimes courage looked like a quiet girl refusing to hand over her sketchbook. And sometimes, the people who seemed most certain of themselves were the ones who needed saving the most. The news of what happened on the bridge spread through Jefferson High School like wildfire. By lunchtime, everyone had heard some version of the story, though the details varied wildly depending on who was telling it. Some said Maya had stood up to Derek and made him cry. Others claimed Derek had had some kind of breakdown and was being sent to therapy. A few insisted that the whole thing was staged for social media attention. But the students who had been there, who had witnessed the raw honesty and unexpected transformation, knew the truth was more complicated and more profound than any rumor could capture. They found themselves changed by what they had experienced, carrying within them a new understanding of what was possible when people chose vulnerability over veneer. Maya sat in the school cafeteria for the first time in 3 years, surrounded by Emma Rodriguez, Marcus Thompson, Sarah Kim, and 6 other students who had been on the bridge that morning. The table buzzed with nervous energy as they navigated this new dynamic, learning how to be authentic with each other after years of hiding behind carefully constructed personas. I keep expecting someone to tell us we can't sit here, Marcus admitted, glancing around the crowded cafeteria. Like there's going to be some rule about outcasts gathering together.
Emma laughed, a sound filled with relief and disbelief.
I know exactly what you mean. I've been eating lunch in the library for 2 years because I was convinced everyone would reject me if I tried to join a group. The thing is, Sarah added, unwrapping a sandwich her mother had packed, we were all so focused on trying not to be rejected that we never gave anyone a chance to accept us. Maya listened to the conversation while sketching quick portraits of her new friends in a fresh notebook. Her damaged sketchbook was at home, drying out after the morning rain, but she found herself unable to stop drawing. For the first time, she had willing subjects, people who were genuinely interested in her art and eager to see how she perceived them.
Can I see? Emma asked, leaning over to look at Maya's drawing.
Maya hesitated for a moment, old habits of secrecy dying hard. Then turned the notebook so Emma could see. The sketch captured Emma mid-laugh, her eyes bright with joy, her whole face animated in a way that showed her natural warmth and intelligence. That's amazing, Emma breathed. Is that really how you see me? It's how you look when you're happy. Maya replied simply, I think you should look that way more often. The comment sparked a deeper conversation about self-perception and authenticity, the kind of discussion that would have been impossible before their shared experience on the bridge. They talked about the masks they wore, the versions of themselves they presented to the world, and the fear that their true selves might not be enough. Across the cafeteria, Derek Morrison sat at his usual table with the football team, but the dynamic had shifted dramatically. Jake and Brad had spent the morning trying to convince their teammates that Derek had temporarily lost his mind, that the incident on the bridge was an aberration that could be ignored and forgotten. He's probably just stressed about college applications, Jake explained to Tyler Matthews, the team's quarterback. You know how it is senior year. Everyone goes a little crazy. But Derek wasn't participating in their damage control efforts. He sat quietly, picking at his lunch and thinking about the conversation he'd had with Maya, and the way it had felt to tell the truth about his fears and insecurities. For the first time in years, he had connected with another person on a genuine level, and the experience had left him questioning everything he thought he knew about himself. Morrison, you okay? Tyler asked, noticing Derek's distraction. You've been weird all morning. Derek looked up at his teammates, these boys he'd considered his closest friends for the past 3 years. They were watching him with a mixture of concern and suspicion, waiting to see if he would return to his normal self or continue down this unexpected path of self-reflection. I've been thinking about the way we treat people, Derek said finally. About the way I treat people. Brad rolled his eyes. Dude, not this again. You said sorry to the weird girl. It's done. Can we move on? Her name is Maya, Derek corrected, his voice firmer than he'd intended. And it's not done. I've been thinking about all the people we've made feel like outsiders, all the times we've chosen to exclude instead of include. The table fell silent. Derek's teammates exchanged glances, unsure how to respond to this version of their friend. They had signed up to be part of Derek's inner circle, enjoying the social benefits that came with aligning themselves with one of the school's most popular students. This introspective, apologetic Derek was not part of the bargain. Tyler leaned forward, lowering his voice. Look, Derek, I get that you're going through something, but you need to think about what you're saying. We have a reputation to maintain. We have a hierarchy here that works for us. You start acting like feelings matter more than status, and everything falls apart. Derek stared at Tyler, really seeing him for the first time. Tyler wasn't wrong about the hierarchy. Jefferson High School definitely operated on a social system that placed athletes, particularly football players, at the top. Derek had benefited from that system, had used his position to get special treatment from teachers, attention from girls, and respect from other students. But he was beginning to understand that the system had also cost him something valuable, the ability to form genuine connections with people. His relationships were based on his utility to others, not on who he was as a person. When he removed the football jersey and the family name, he wasn't sure there was anything left worth knowing. What if the hierarchy is the problem? Derek asked quietly. The question sent a shockwave through the table. Even suggesting that their social system might be flawed was tantamount to treason in Tyler's worldview. Are you kidding me right now? Tyler demanded, his voice rising enough to attract attention from nearby tables. You want to throw away everything we've built here? Everything we've worked for? What have we built? Derek challenged. Seriously, what have we created that we should be proud of? A system where people like Maya Chen eat lunch alone for 3 years because they're afraid to approach us? Where people like Marcus Thompson spend every day feeling invisible because they don't play sports or have the right clothes? Tyler's face was flushed with anger and disbelief. Those people choose to be alone. We didn't force them to be weird and antisocial. We made them afraid to be anything else. Derek shot back. We created an environment where being different meant being targeted, where showing vulnerability meant becoming a victim. The argument was attracting attention from other tables now. That's right. Students throughout the cafeteria were turning to watch, sensing that something significant was happening. Some pulled out their phones, ready to record whatever unfolded next. Jake tried to defuse the situation. Guys, let's just calm down. We're making a scene. But Derek was past worrying about scenes. For months he had been going through the motions of his life, playing the role of the popular jock while feeling increasingly empty inside. The encounter with Maya had shown him that there were other ways to exist, other ways to connect with people that didn't require maintaining a facade of superiority. I'm done, Derek said, standing up from the table. I'm done pretending that making other people feel small makes us bigger. I'm done with all of it. He picked up his lunch tray and walked away from his teammates, leaving behind years of carefully cultivated friendships and social positioning. The cafeteria buzzed with excitement and confusion as students tried to process what they had just witnessed. Derek found himself walking toward Maya's table, his heart pounding with nervousness. He had no plan, no script for how this would go. He only knew that he wanted to be around people who valued honesty over image, who were willing to be vulnerable with each other. "Can I sit here?" Derek asked when he reached Maya's table. The question hung in the air as 8 pairs of eyes stared up at him in amazement. Derek Morrison, asking permission to join the outcasts' table, was not something any of them had imagined possible. Maya looked around at her new friends, reading the mixture of surprise and uncertainty in their faces. She understood their hesitation. Derek had been their oppressor, directly or indirectly, for years. Accepting him into their group required a level of forgiveness and trust that wouldn't come easily. But Maya also remembered the boy she had seen on the bridge that morning, the one who had admitted his fears and promised to do better. She believed in second chances and the possibility of redemption. "Yes," Maya said simply. "You can sit here." Derek sat down across from Maya, acutely aware of the stares they were receiving from around the cafeteria. His former teammates were watching in disbelief. Other popular students were whispering among themselves, and the rest of the school seemed to be holding its breath to see what would happen next. "I broke up with Ashley," Derek said suddenly, then immediately looked embarrassed. "Sorry, that was random. I realized I was dating her because it looked right, not because we actually connected about anything important." Emma raised her eyebrows. "That must have been an interesting conversation." Derek laughed ruefully. "She told me I was having some kind of crisis, and that I should call her when I came to my senses. Maybe she's right. Maybe this is a crisis. But it feels like waking up." Marcus leaned forward, his curiosity overcoming his wariness. "What's it like? Going from the top of the food chain to this?" "Terrifying," Derek admitted. "But also kind of amazing. I spent so much energy maintaining my image that I forgot what it felt like to just be myself." "Who is yourself?" Sarah asked. "When you strip away all the expectations in the role-playing, who is Derek Morrison?" It was a profound question, one that Derek had been avoiding for years. He sat quietly for a moment, really considering it. "I don't know yet," he said, finally. "But I'd like to find out, and I'd like to do it with people who care more about truth than status." Maya smiled, the first genuine smile Derek had ever seen from her. It transformed her entire face, revealing a warmth and intelligence that had been hidden beneath layers of defensive withdrawal. "Welcome to the island of misfit toys," she said. Derek laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "I think I'm going to like it here." Around them, the cafeteria continued to buzz with speculation and gossip. By the end of the day, everyone would know about Derek's dramatic exit from his former social circle and his unexpected alliance with the school's outcasts. Some would see it as a temporary rebellion, others as a complete breakdown. But the people sitting at that table knew it was something else entirely, the beginning of a new way of being. They were creating a space where authenticity mattered more than popularity, where vulnerability was strength rather than weakness, where people could discover who they really were beneath the masks they wore to navigate high school's social minefield. The transformation that had begun on the rain-soaked bridge that morning was spreading, creating ripples that would eventually touch every corner of Jefferson High School. Students who had been hiding their true selves began to consider the possibility of being seen. Others who had been cruel out of fear began to question whether their behavior was really protecting them or just trapping them in cycles of emptiness. Change was coming to Jefferson High School, carried forward by an unlikely group of students who had chosen courage over conformity, truth over tradition. And at the center of it all was a quiet girl with a sketchbook, who had discovered that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept the way things have always been. 3 months after the incident on the bridge, Jefferson High School looked the same on the surface, but beneath the familiar routines and hierarchies, something fundamental had shifted. The change hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been without resistance, but the seeds planted that rainy October morning had taken root and begun to grow in unexpected directions. Maya Chen walked across the bridge on a crisp January morning, her footsteps confident and unhurried. The same structure that had once filled her with dread had become a symbol of transformation, a daily reminder that courage could emerge from the most unlikely circumstances. Students now called it the Friendship Bridge, though the official name remained unchanged on the school's maps. The morning ritual of harassment had been replaced by something entirely different. Instead of Derek and his friends lying in wait to torment vulnerable students, the bridge had become an unofficial meeting place for what the school administration had begun calling the Inclusion Initiative, though the students involved preferred to simply call it being decent to each other. Maya found Emma Rodriguez already waiting by the center of the bridge, along with Marcus Thompson, Sarah Kim, and 12 other students who had gradually joined their expanding circle. They came from different grades, different backgrounds, different interests, but they were united by a shared commitment to creating a more compassionate school environment. "Morning, Maya," Emma called out, waving a steaming cup of coffee from the cart that Mrs. Patterson had convinced the administration to allow on campus. "How's the project coming along?" Maya smiled, patting the portfolio case slung over her shoulder. "Almost finished. I think you're all going to love it." The project Emma was referring to had grown out of a suggestion Maya had made in November. What if they could find a way to make the positive changes happening in their small group visible to the entire school? What if they could create something that would inspire other students to examine their own behavior and consider joining the movement toward greater kindness? Maya's solution had been both simple and profound, a series of portraits capturing students from every social group, every grade level, every background that Jefferson High School contained. But these weren't typical school photos or yearbook shots. Each portrait was accompanied by a quote from the subject about their hopes, fears, dreams, and struggles. The goal was to humanize people who might otherwise be seen as stereotypes or statistics. Derek Morrison approached the group, moving with a confidence that was somehow both familiar and completely different from his previous swagger. The change in him had been remarkable to watch. Without the need to maintain his intimidating persona, Derek had revealed himself to be thoughtful, funny, and genuinely caring about the people around him. "Sorry I'm late," he said, slightly out of breath. "I was helping Coach Williams move equipment. Did you know they're thinking about adding an art therapy component to the counseling program? They're looking for student advisors." "That's amazing," Maya responded, her eyes lighting up. "Who suggested it?" Derek grinned. "I did. I told them about your portrait project and how it's been helping people see each other differently. Dr. Martinez thinks it could be really beneficial for students dealing with anxiety and depression." The transformation in Derek had perhaps been the most dramatic, but he wasn't the only one who had changed. Emma had stepped into a leadership role, organizing study groups and peer support networks. Marcus had started a book club that met during lunch, creating space for quieter students to connect over shared interests. Sarah had joined the debate team and discovered a passion for advocacy that she was already channeling toward college plans and social work. But the changes hadn't been limited to their immediate group. The ripple effect of their example had spread throughout the school in ways that continued to surprise everyone involved. Tyler Matthews approached the group hesitantly, his hands shoved deep in his jacket pockets. 3 months ago, he had been one of Derek's harshest critics, accusing him of betraying their friendship and destroying team unity. But something had been eating at Tyler since that confrontation in the cafeteria, a growing discomfort with the person he saw himself becoming. "Hey," Tyler said awkwardly. Can I talk to you guys for a minute?" The group fell silent, unsure how to respond. Tyler had continued to maintain the old social hierarchies after Derek's departure, becoming even more rigid in his enforcement of unwritten rules about who belonged where. Several students in their group had been on the receiving end of Tyler's increased hostility. Derek stepped forward, his expression cautious but not unwelcoming. "What's up, Tyler?" Tyler struggled to find the words. His face flushed with embarrassment, and something that might have been shame. "I've been watching what you guys are doing," he said finally. "The way you treat people, the way you make everyone feel welcome. And I've been thinking about the way I've been acting since you left the team. He paused, looking around at the faces surrounding him. I've been a complete ass. Worse than Derek ever was, actually. Because I was angry about being abandoned, so I took it out on people who had nothing to do with our problems. Maya studied Tyler's face, looking for signs of sincerity. She had learned to read people more carefully since her confrontation with Derek, to look beyond their words to their underlying motivations. What she saw in Tyler wasn't the calculated manipulation she had feared, but genuine regret and a desire to make amends. "What do you want from us?" Maya asked directly. "I want to learn how to be different," Tyler replied. "I want to understand what Derek figured out, what changed him from someone who hurt people into someone who helps them." Derek looked at his former friend with a mixture of compassion and wariness. Their friendship hadn't survived Derek's transformation intact. Too much had been built on shared cruelty and mutual reinforcement of toxic behaviors. But Derek believed in the possibility of redemption, largely because these people had offered it to him when he needed it most. "It's not easy," Derek warned. "Changing means admitting that you've been wrong about a lot of things. It means giving up advantages you've gotten used to having. And some people will never forgive you for the things you've done." Tyler nodded, his jaw set with determination. "I know. But I can't keep being the person I've been. I don't like who I see in the mirror anymore." Emma stepped forward, her natural empathy overcoming her caution. "The first step is apologizing to the people you've hurt. Not just a general apology, but specific acknowledgement of what you did and why it was wrong." "I can do that," Tyler said immediately. "I have a long list of people I need to talk to." "And then you have to do the work," Marcus added. "Every day, choosing to be better than you were the day before. It's not enough to just stop being cruel. You have to actively work to be kind." Tyler looked around the group, seeing them clearly for perhaps the first time. These weren't the weak, pathetic losers he had dismissed them as. They were intelligent, thoughtful, courageous people who had built something beautiful out of their shared experiences of pain and healing. "Will you help me?" Tyler asked. "Will you teach me how to do this?" Maya exchanged glances with her friends, conducting a silent conversation through expressions and subtle nods. Finally, she spoke for the group. "We'll give you a chance," she said, "but you have to understand that trust is earned, not given. You have to prove that this is real, not just another way to manipulate people." "I understand," Tyler replied. "Thank you for even considering it." As the group continued their morning conversation, other students began to stop and join them. This had become a pattern over the past few months. The bridge gathering had grown from a small circle of former outcasts into a diverse community that included athletes, artists, honor students, class clowns, and everything in between. Mrs. Patterson appeared at the edge of the group, carrying a stack of papers and wearing the proud smile she reserved for her most successful teaching moments. The elderly English teacher had become an unofficial faculty sponsor for the student inclusion movement, providing guidance and support when needed. "Maya dear," Mrs. Patterson said, "I have wonderful news about your portrait project. The school board approved the exhibition, and they want to display it in the main hallway during Parent Conference Week. They're calling it Faces of Jefferson, Stories Behind the Students." Maya felt a surge of excitement mixed with nervousness. Having her work displayed publicly was a dream come true, but it also meant that everyone would see how she perceived her classmates, including some who might not appreciate her honest portrayal of their complexity. "That's incredible," Anna said, squeezing Maya's arm. "You're going to inspire so many people." "We're going to inspire people," Maya corrected. "None of this would have happened without all of you being willing to be part of it." Derek watched the interaction with a profound sense of gratitude. 3 months ago, he had been trapped in a role that required him to crush people like Maya in order to maintain his status. Now he was surrounded by individuals who celebrated each other's successes and supported each other's growth. The difference was transformative. "There's something else," Mrs. Patterson continued. "Channel 8 News wants to do a story about the changes happening here at Jefferson. They're calling it How One Act of Courage Changed a School. They'd like to interview the students involved, if you're interested." The group exchanged excited glances. Having their story shared beyond the walls of Jefferson High School could inspire similar changes in other schools, other communities. The ripple effect they had started could spread even further. "I think we should do it," Sarah said. "If our experience can help other students find the courage to stand up for themselves or change their behavior, we owe it to them to share what we've learned." Maya looked around at the faces of her friends, these people who had started as strangers and had become her chosen family. She thought about the girl she had been 3 months ago, isolated and afraid, convinced that she was powerless to change her circumstances. That girl could never have imagined standing here now, surrounded by people who valued her thoughts and opinions, preparing to share her story with the world. Yes, Maya said firmly. Let's do it. The morning bell rang, signaling the start of another school day. Students began to disperse toward their first classes, but the energy of connection and possibility lingered in the air. The old stone bridge stood as solid as ever, but everything around it had been transformed. Maya gathered her things and began walking toward the arts building, Derek falling into step beside her. It had become their tradition to walk together to first period, a friendship that still surprised both of them with its depth and authenticity. Are you nervous about the exhibition? Derek asked. Maya considered the question. A little, she admitted. But mostly I'm excited. I want people to see what I see when I look at them. I want them to understand that everyone has a story worth knowing. Even Tyler? Derek asked with a slight smile. Especially Tyler, Maya replied. He's at the beginning of his story right now. Who knows what he might become if people believe in his ability to change. They reached the arts building, and Derek prepared to continue on to his own classes. But he paused at the doorway, looking back at Maya with an expression of wonder and gratitude. Thank you, he said simply. For what? For seeing something in me worth saving, for showing me that it's possible to be better than I thought I could be. Maya smiled, the same radiant expression that had become her signature since emerging from her shell of isolation. We saved each other, Derek. That's what real friendship does. As Derek walked away toward his chemistry class, Maya entered the arts building and made her way to the pottery studio. She had 30 minutes before first period officially started, time she planned to spend working on a new project, a sculpture representing the bridge, with small figures of students reaching out to help each other across. The morning sun streamed through the studio windows, casting everything in warm, golden light. Maya pulled out her sketchbook and began working on the preliminary designs, her pencil moving with confidence and purpose across the page. 3 months ago, she could never have imagined that her art would be seen by anyone beyond her grandmother. Now it was about to be displayed throughout her school, shared on the evening news, and used as a tool for creating positive change. But more important than any external recognition was the transformation Maya felt within herself. She had learned that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to act in spite of it. She had discovered that vulnerability could be a superpower, that showing your true self to the world was the first step toward creating authentic connections. Most importantly, she had learned that one person, choosing to stand up for what was right, could change everything. The ripples from that rainy morning on the bridge continued to spread, touching lives in ways she might never fully know. But Maya was content knowing that she had played a part in creating something beautiful out of something painful. The girl who had once perfected the art of invisibility had become impossible to ignore. Not because she demanded attention, but because she had learned to shine with the light of her authentic self. And in that light, others had found the courage to shine as well. Jefferson High School was still the same building, with the same hallways and classrooms and teenage dramas that had always existed. But the students walking those hallways were different now. They looked at each other with more compassion, spoke to each other with greater kindness, and understood that beneath every surface, no matter how tough or perfect or intimidating, was a person worthy of respect and care. The bridge that had once been a place of torment had become a symbol of hope. And every morning, as students crossed from one side to the other, they were reminded that transformation was always possible, that today could be the day they chose to be better than they were yesterday. Maya Chen had learned that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply refuse to accept the way things have always been. And in that refusal, in that moment of saying no to cruelty and yes to possibility, she had discovered not just her own strength, but the strength that lives within all of us, waiting for the courage to set it free.